Have you ever felt like you're caught in that classic management squeeze? You know the one. You're responsible for getting results, but you're not actually the one doing the day-to-day work. Well, today we're going to dive into a framework that can totally transform how you lead your team through that. Sound familiar? Yeah, this is the core challenge for so many mid-level managers. You're stuck right between what leadership wants and what the team on the ground is doing. Your success depends entirely on guiding other people, and that is exactly what we are tackling today. So here's our game plan. We'll start by unpacking that feeling of being trapped, then we'll look at the seriously high cost of just saying nothing. After that, we'll introduce a really clear, actionable framework that will make you a much more effective and respected leader. All right, let's dive right in and talk about that unique squeeze that managers face and the powerful, powerful temptation it creates. You know, this is practically wired into us from childhood, right? We want to be liked, we want to be supportive, but here's the twist. As a manager, your job is to say it. Your core responsibility is to be clear, even when the message is tough. And that means you have to consciously undo a whole lifetime of training. So, what really happens when we choose silence over clarity? When we decide it's more important to be nice than to be effective? Well, the consequences are way bigger than you might think, and they can create this really dangerous downward spiral. Let's look at a real-world example of how this can backfire catastrophically. So Bob's manager really wanted to spare his feelings. She offered this kind of vague praise and just completely avoided the real issue. His performance was poor. And this right here is the first casualty of silence. By not confronting the problem, his manager didn't help Bob at all. In fact, she actively took away any incentive for him to get better. She basically created a false reality where he thought everything was totally fine. And here's the thing, it was never just about Bob. The problem infected the entire team. The top performers got resentful, quality started to drop, and any trust in leadership just fell apart because they all saw that bad work was being accepted without a single comment. So in the end, that effort to spare someone's feelings in the short term led to a pretty devastating outcome for everybody. Firing someone you never actually gave a fair chance to improve isn't nice, it's just a failure of leadership. Okay, so what is the alternative to this whole downward spiral? Well, this brings us to a really powerful solution, the Radical Candor framework. Now, this is key. This isn't about finding some kind of perfect balance or a halfway point. It's about doing both of these things at the exact same time. It's about caring enough about the person as a human being to be absolutely, totally clear about their work. This spinach in your teeth test is just a brilliant way to see it in action. Think about it. Obnoxious aggression is when you challenge without caring. You're just being a jerk. Manipulative insincerity is when you do neither. You just gossip. And then there's ruinous empathy. That's where Bob's manager was living. It comes from a good place, a fear of hurting someone's feelings, but it's ultimately super unhelpful and damaging. Only radical candor is actually helpful. Okay, this all sounds great in theory, right? But let's get practical. How do you actually put this framework into action day to day, especially when you're juggling deadlines and team dynamics? This right here, this is the mantra you need to remember. When you feel that old, if you don't have anything nice to say, instinct kicking in, remind yourself that your goal is clarity. Being clear is actually the kindest, most respectful thing you can offer your team because it gives them a real chance to succeed. The situation behavior impact model. Think of this as your secret weapon. It strips away all the personal judgment and it forces the conversation to focus on concrete, observable facts. It's not about attacking the person, it's about addressing the work. Just look at the difference here. Saying something was a bit confusing is totally useless. What is a person supposed to do with that? But the radically candid feedback is specific and it's completely actionable. Now that person knows exactly what to fix for next time. That's a gift. And a great way to remember how to deliver feedback is to be hip. The how matters just as much as the what. Be humble, be helpful, and please be immediate. And of course, always remember the golden rule. You praise in public and you criticize in private. This is so important. Guidance has a really short half-life. Its value just evaporates over time. Saving it all up for a formal review, that turns what could have been minor issues into major grievances. You gotta give feedback right away when it's most relevant, most effective, and way less dramatic.
And all this leads to a really crucial mindset shift. We have to stop thinking about giving feedback as some kind of confrontation. It's not about being confrontational. It's about fulfilling your fundamental duty as a leader.
I mean, at the end of the day, what's your core job as a manager? It's guiding the team to get results. And that guidance, both the praise and the criticism, it isn't some optional extra. It is the engine that drives your team's performance and their development.
Think about it for a second. When you take the time to give someone specific, even tough feedback, you're telling them two really powerful things. One, I'm paying attention to your work, and two, I believe you can do better. That is a message that shows you are truly invested in their success.
Now, here's a hard truth of leadership. Your job isn't to be popular, it's to be effective. And avoiding directness just to keep the peace doesn't actually create peace. In the long run, it creates way more conflict, more resentment, and more failure. I really want to land this point. Radical candor is not a license to be a jerk. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It's a method for building the deep, authentic trust that is absolutely required for a high-performing team to thrive. Without that foundation of caring personally, any challenge you give just feels like aggression.
So I'll leave you with this question. Just think about it. That one conversation you've been putting off, maybe about performance or behavior or a missed deadline, that conversation is your responsibility. And now you have the tools and the framework to have it kindly, clearly, and really, really effectively.